connectivity infrastructure through extensive partnership focused on knowledge sharing, capacity building, and project operation. We support the aspirations of people in developing countries to improve their lives through better connectivity, while also making sure we protect our planet. Climate smart infrastructure shows it's possible to do both.
I would like to invite to the podium for the keynote speech His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Maïn, the Egyptian Minister of Finance. تفضل يا دكتور.
هطلع.
السلام عليكم. Good afternoon. Dear Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the government of Egypt, I would like to express special thanks to our co-organizers, the Multilateral Cooperation Center for Development Finance, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the Islamic Development Bank, the World Bank, World Resources Institute, and the Vulnerable 20 Finance Ministers Group of countries. We envisage the ongoing discussion during the ongoing COP to embody a move from pledges to proper implementation. We firmly believe that practical policies and the practice discussed can be translated and operationalized into firm actions. There is their need to mobilize climate finance to developing countries and bridge that current financing gap. Connectivity infrastructure is crucial. It's a crucial sector that facilitates economic growth and enhances multilateral cooperation. Therefore, it is crucial that such infrastructure is designed and implemented in a climate-resilient manner, integrating adaptation and mitigation, loss and damage strategy to deal with climate-related risks. We believe that in addition to mobilizing climate finance, there is a great need for increased practical policy lessons from a global perspective on the topic of climate smart connectivity. This includes knowledge sharing on best practices for climate smart infrastructure of several of the world's leading multilateral development banks. This will provide much needed knowledge on climate adaptation and mitigation and how this can be practically applied to connectivity infrastructure projects. This includes not only different modes and sources of financing and global instruments for climate financing that are applicable to infrastructure projects, but also putting in appropriate incentivizing frameworks and structure to do so. One of the key success of the previous COPs was the ability to mobilize pledges from the private sector financiers and investors. In order to turn these pledges into commitment, it is essential that innovative tools be utilized to de-risk these investments through government guarantees or other tools to provide the necessary assurances to private financiers. It is within this context that we can truly mobilize the trillions needed to save the planet over the medium to long term. This, however, will need increased synergy between governments, development financiers, and private investors to create such necessary de-risking instruments. Furthermore, given the current difficult macroeconomic environment globally, there is a need to tackle the debt burden of developing countries and ensuring the reduction of emissions and ensuring that infrastructure investment are climate resilient, particularly from the perspective of climate adaptation. This is crucial because otherwise risks and the challenges will increase with this risk results. This is not a solution for one group at the expense of the other. Such solutions are crucial and for the good of the entire planet. Finally, there must be a solution to ensure that green finance in general and climate finance in particular is more attractive than traditional finance. Particularly since this would increase the existing debt overhang many developing countries are sufficient from due to the several crises and shocks to the global economy that the world has been facing over the past couple of years. Let me conclude by saying I wish you a good panel and discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maïd, for your very interesting intervention and keynote. Now I leave the floor with our moderator, Dr. Eddie Izas. And I will leave you to introduce your panel.
Thank you so very much. It's a great pleasure to be with you.
One more thing, I'm very sorry, because we have had problems over the day. For the panelists, please do not hold your mic like that. It cuts the wireless network. So, as you can see, it's cutting. I would just ask you kindly to hold it from here so it doesn't cut. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the kind instructions. And this event concludes a series of 4 workshops that the partners here have organized over the last 6 months, bringing together 2 topics that are generally not discussed in the same settings: connectivity infrastructure and climate action. So we are very pleased to really discuss the critical role, for example, that power grids play to connect renewable energy sources and users, the role of connectivity infrastructure and transport for trade, and how important mainstreaming climate is in this process. So in line with the priorities of Egypt, for this COP we will be talking a lot about financing and implementation, and the partners here have brought excellent examples during the last 6 months of the exchanges to show that connectivity infrastructure and climate action can come together. It is my great pleasure to invite the climate envoy for China, Mr. Xie Zhenghua, to give the opening remarks and conclusion. Please, sir. Please join me.
尊敬的各位嘉宾，在座的各位先生们、女士们，不知道现在同传能不能传给非常荣幸参加聚焦互联互通基础设施建设和气候变化为主题开展的对话和交流。我本来呢应该跟大家坐在一起。发表意见，跟回答大家的问题，但是我已经约好了4点半要和大会的主席要磋商这次会议的结果，所以我只能讲完了之后呢就离席。如果大家有什么问题，我愿意和大家再进一步的交流。今年以来，全球各地高温热浪、干旱、暴雨、洪涝等极端的气候在频发。对自然生态环境、经济生产和生活秩序，这个民众的生命健康带来了严峻的威胁，再次给国际社会敲响了警钟。气候变化已经从未来的挑战变为现实而紧迫的危机。当前新冠肺炎疫情、地缘冲突、能源粮食短缺、经济迟缓等挑战交织在一起，应对气候变化的多边进程面临着更大的挑战，给公约及其巴黎协定的实施带来了很多困难和挑战，也给 巴黎协定的执行带来了许多不确定性和困难。一些国家为了应对眼前的能源和粮食危机，在实施的过程当中呢，这个气候政策出现了一些回摆，煤炭等化石能源的消费以及碳的排放量有所增加。在这些国家呢，我们希望这只是应对眼前困难的权宜之计。这个巴黎协定和2030年联合国可持续发展议程所确定的全球绿色低碳转型创新的大趋势不要改变。各方在应对短期困难的同时，应当将当前的发展与长期的转型很好的结合起来，以转型创新为路径，推动系统性的变革，实现经济、社会、能源、粮食、环境、健康和气候变化等多领域的协同。下面我介绍一下中国的情况。中国始终积极地应对气候变化，采取了强有力的行动来努力实现2030年前和2060年前碳中和的碳达峰和碳中和的目标。各位，现在我强调的不是30和60，而是30年和60年之前，是这么一个概念。所以我为了实现这个目标，也宣布了不在境外新建煤电项。我们说了，去年说了，我们已经在做，也制定出台了包括能源、工业、交通运输等重点领域，煤炭、石油、天然气、钢铁等重点行业碳达峰的实施方案，以及科技、财政、绿色金融、减污降碳、人才培养等方面的支持保障方案，构建起碳达峰、碳中和1+1的政策体系。所有的这些重点领域、重点行业、重点方面，都是在我们已经发布的这个实现双碳目标的顶层方案，在它的指导之下来制定和实施的。各级政府呢，也都制定了自己落实双碳目标的行动方案。2012年至2021年，实际上就是10年的时间，中国单位 GDP 二氧化碳的排放已经下降了34.4%，单位 GDP 的能耗比2012年下降了26.3%，累计节能约14亿吨标准煤，相当于少排放二氧化碳37亿吨。新能源发电累计装机容量达到了11.2亿千瓦以上，水电、风电、光伏发电累计装机容量都已经达到和超过了3亿千瓦，均居世界第一。我们现在已经在沙漠、戈壁、荒漠地区规划建设4.5亿千瓦大型风光发电的基地，第一批9500万千瓦已经全部开工建设，今年年底呢，应该能够完成4000万千瓦的装机。中国可再生能源的装机占全球的1/3，全球50%的风电、8%的光伏设备组件都来自中国。用于可再生能源的投资已经连续7年居世界第一。中国发展的新能源汽车现在的保有量呢，已经达到了将近1100万辆，占全球的1半以上。这个森林蓄积量已经达到了194亿立方米，已经成为全球森林资源增长最多的国家。我们力争在10年内再植树700亿棵。中国积极为广大发展国家应对气候变化提供力所能及的支持和帮助，开展南南合作。到目前为止呢，已经累计安排超过12亿人民币用于开展气候变化的南南合作。 与老挝、柬埔寨、塞舌尔合作建设低碳示范区，与埃塞俄比亚、巴基斯坦、萨摩亚、智利、古巴、埃及等31个发展国家开展40个减缓和适应气候变化的项目，为120多个发展中国家开展了能力建设的培训，与28个国家共同发起了“一带一路”绿色发展伙伴关系倡议，搭建了与东盟、欧盟、阿盟、非盟、中东欧等地区能源合作的平台，开展了绿色投资合作，推动建设绿色的一带一路。互联互通是全球商业的基础，海上、铁路、航空运输、基础设施建设的发展，促进了经济繁荣。互联互通基础设施建设也有助于各国应对气候变化，推进碳中和和净零排放目标的实现。中国的全球能源互联网倡议为满足全球快速增长的能源需求提供了路线图。通过全球互联的电网，将可再生能源的生产与全球的消费者连接起来。发展中国家，特别是脆弱国家，受气候变化的影响尤为严重，他们对提高互联互通基础设施的韧性需求巨大。据世界银行估计，在低收入和中等收入国家，包括气候冲击在内，自然灾害对发电和运输造成的直接损失，每年达到180亿元。仅靠发展中国家无力为低碳韧性的互联互通基础设施建设提供充足的资金，发达经济体、私营部门、银行等需要发挥作用，为气候智慧型基础设施建设提供资金和技术支持，这对应对气候变化和可持续发展至关重要。昨天晚上我参加了达沃斯论坛里的这个30多个跨国企业家们的一个论坛，他们现在正在为筹集每年1万亿美金的这么一个基础设施建设的这个资金呢，在讨论怎么样来做出他们的贡献。所以各位嘉宾，希望大家在这次会议上充分的交流，这个凝聚共识，互相这个取长补短，促进我们在气候变化领域里的合作，为加速建设绿色低碳转型创新的这么一个世界经济做出大家的贡献。最后呢，祝这次论坛呢圆满的成功。很抱歉，我得要提前离开会场了，谢谢大家，谢谢大家。
Thank you very much, Envoy, for the very practical advice and ideas that you have. And it is my great pleasure now to invite Dr. Al-Yasser, Chairman of the Islamic Development Bank Group. We learned over the last 6 months the great progress that the institution has done on sustainability, on regional connectivity, on resilience. So we'd love to hear your perspectives on that topic. You may need to just put it a little bit closer to your mouth.
Is it working now?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really honored to speak to you today on behalf of the Islamic Development Bank on this truly critical subject. Regional connectivity is a cornerstone of regional economic cooperation and integration, yet historically the crucial nexus between regional connectivity infrastructure and climate financing has not received the level of attention and investment it deserves. We all can acknowledge that sustainable transport systems such as roads and railways and smart infrastructure like green ports and grid-connected renewable energy systems are critical to achieving the Paris Agreement goals. The Islamic Development Bank recognizes the added economic value of regional connectivity and its role in addressing climate change challenges. However, the infrastructure sectors need huge investments. Therefore, it is paramount to mobilize finance for climate-smart infrastructure to support our member countries achieve their nationally determined contribution targets and 2030 agenda. That is why we give due attention to investing in sustainable infrastructure of our member states. In the last 5 years, an average of 55% of the bank's total commitments to climate action have been dedicated to climate adaptation, particularly building sustainable infrastructure. The bank has been a member of the Multilateral Cooperation Center for Development Finance, or the MCDF, since July 2021. I take keen interest in the Islamic Development Bank's active participation in several workshops that have been mounted to mobilize finance for climate-smart connectivity infrastructure leading up to today's gathering. These workshops have allowed the Islamic Development Bank to share some of its extensive experiences in financing sustainable infrastructure in some of our member countries. These include, and these are not exclusive, this is not an exclusive list, but they include resilient coastal infrastructure projects in West Africa. They include sustainable transport system infrastructure finance in Turkey, and electricity interconnectivity project between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Arab Republic of Egypt. Ladies and gentlemen, I am also glad to share with you that the Islamic Development Bank, the MCDF, and the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank are planning to conduct a joint study on cross-border connectivity in Central Asia. The study's objective is to map the past and count global and regional initiatives implemented in Central Asia, focusing on key connectivity sectors and cross-border economic corridors. It is hoped that the outcome of the study would lead to significant projects for the region. The Islamic Development Bank will continue to collaborate with various partners to support our member countries in achieving their sustainable and smart infrastructure targets and other climate actions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Dr. Yasser, thank you so much for emphasizing the emphasis on sustainable infrastructure and the connectivity in that process. I think that study in Central Asia is going to be an example of how to bring these two topics of regional connectivity and climate change. I'm going to now invite, we're going to be rotating between IFIs and countries, to invite the Honorable Ruth Coker-Collins, the Minister of Public Works of Liberia, also speaking on behalf of the B20 countries, the most vulnerable nations to climate change. Thank you so much, Your Excellency.
Good afternoon to everybody. I'm very much honored to represent my country, Liberia. Like he said, my name is Ruth Coker-Collins, the Minister of Ministry of Public Works. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I will actually emphasize the constraints we go through as a country or as an institution. Mobilizing finance for climate smart connectivity infrastructure. We from Liberia are going to give a small scenario on what we go through on a daily basis. Climate change represents real risks to our economies, our people, the livelihood of our people in infrastructure, and in particular our road network. With over 90% of our national road network, which is about 13,000 kilometers, they are unpaved, increase in participations and flowing to a third of our road network. Moreover, is one of the wettest cities in the world, with the highest rainfall occurring from May to October, which with its average annual rainfall that exceeds 4,500 millimeters. To put simply, We are consistent in the state of rebuilding roads, network, and repairing them. And then, maintenance becomes challenging because of the general increase in rainfall intensively through our country. Consequently, 50% of our primary roads network is increasingly to our national population with negative flow on effects on our economy, trades, livelihoods, and health. This cycle of building and repairing our roads is straining our national budget. And the increase in our indebtedness as bulk of our roads are built through multilateral loans. While we recognize the need for investment in climate smart roads, for which we are taking fundamental steps like climate stress testing of our roads, revisiting our standards, and etc., we need to break the cycle of build and repair as public budget do not provide us with a buffer to absorb the climate shocks. For example, between 2014 to 2018, the NDB and our partners invested about $35 million to development of road network and infrastructure goals, whilst between 2016-2017 to 2020-2021, the government of Liberia expenditure on road development goals was about $111 million, which is about 8% of our share of our GDP. Additionally, to a study conducted by the World Bank in 2018, tentatively, Liberia needs about $3.4 billion to build our entire road network accessible, with about $2.5 billion needed for our major or primary roads corridor and $1.2 billion needed for road access. We need alternative means of financing our infrastructure development. Let me emphasize this. We need alternative means of financing our infrastructure development. For example, through economic cooperation that will mobilize financial resources for such development. This is much needed for highly debted countries, and we look forward to the support of the V20 group to broker important economic cooperation conversations. We are also looking forward to the mobilization of loss and damage to finance the rebuilding of our road network to climate resilient standards. Loss and damage finance is a key agenda item at the COP, but we understand that COP group is also taking fundamental steps towards a loss and damage funding program to support least developed countries like ours. I want to say thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for that opportunity to present our case.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for bringing the realities that climate action on connectivity infrastructure is not theoretical, that you live it every day, that is a drain on resources, and it is a tremendous impact on the families of Liberia. Thank you for bringing the voices of the vulnerable to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I want to invite now Mr. Jin Li-chung, President of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. And connectivity infrastructure and climate are part of the DNA of the institution. We'd love to hear your perspectives and examples on the topic. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank was born to deal with the global challenges. But don't be misled by the title of our bank. Asian Infrastructure Investment is not simply financing projects for anti-climate change, for connectivity in Asia. Asia cannot sustain itself without connecting with the rest of the world. And some people suggest to me, Mr. Jin, why don't you change the name of this bank? I said, we don't have to. A means Asia, Africa, Latin America. We're AAA, right? So no change. The title is wonderful. But of course, we are born to connect peoples, countries of all the world. But first of all, I'd like to highlight connecting the hearts and the minds of the people is most important. Without connecting minds, hearts and minds, how can you do anything which could be defined as connectivity? So we are willing to work with all of the countries in this world. Even those countries which are not members, we still try to work with them, mobilizing financial resources from those countries which may not be members. And we have our professionals recruited from across the world, whether he or she is a country who is a member. And we award contracts to any company which is competitive, they have high ESG standards, the company is corruption-free, the company will use the last cent to the public interest. Now this is what we are, okay? And also, smart connectivity is based on smart infrastructure. We are not going to finance infrastructure projects the way we did 30, 40 years ago. We have to finance the infrastructure in a smart way. What does that mean? Cost effective. The infrastructure project should not do damage to the environment, should reduce the emission, should help these countries accelerating their process moving towards net zero. Can we do it? Yes, of course. For instance, we could use digital technology to substantially reduce the cost of building infrastructure. We use the new technology to monitor the implementation of the project, whether the project is being done properly. And also through the whole cycle of the project life, we will monitor the emission issues, whether they would be helpful for the climate change. So digital infrastructure and smart infrastructure built in a way very much different from what we used to do years ago would be very much important. In this connection, I like to refer to the importance of MCDF. MCDF is a smart scheme because MCDF has some very special features. We are very happy to work with Islamic Development Bank, with other institutions, because we make sure the resources of MCDF would be used most effectively. And that is why, regardless of the contribution of the resources for MCDF, the decision making is by the board. The decision making is 100% multilateral. And any project sponsored by any institution could have access to MCDF as long as they comply with our standards. So we are doing a lot of things, and let me stop here. I think it's very important for us to think outside the box and have new approaches, new ideas about how we would deal with the challenges of the human society and create a better life for all of the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Jin. I think that these ideas to be able to bring the best technology and to combine ESG standards into the core of connectivity infrastructure are very good. I want next to pass to His Excellency Mr. Ahmed Kuchuk, who actually was the brain behind this workshop series. 6 months ago, you said we need to make sure that we bring connectivity infrastructure, climate action to COP27 finance and implementation. So we'd love to hear about the experience of Egypt and the leadership in this area. Let's listen.
Thank you so much, and Again, welcome all to Sharm el-Sheikh. I'm very happy and pleased to have you all. By the way, Egypt has been a founding member also of the MCDF. We are a true believer of this platform, of creating a platform where we can share, we learn from each other. We need each other, but we can also learn from each other, both at the local and the regional level, and at the global level. So I think MCDF is a great platform for that, for sharing experience and for bringing experience from everywhere. The idea was basically so that we prepare well for the talk, and because of connectivity issues and a very important topic, we decided to gather with all the partners attending with us today. Every single partner here contributed significantly to have workshops where we bring practitioners, bring people who did projects, who implemented projects, who designed projects, who monitor projects together to tell us what they have learned, what they can advise us to do, what we should not do. Learning from mistakes and learning from successes was a very important part of this 4 workshops. And the idea was to build this so that we can come here and present something that can be shared with all emerging markets, with all countries, and we can learn from each other. So I think this is a very important initiative, and we think that MCDF is very well prepared to prepare more in the future there. But let me say one thing about connectivity and smart and green, also a climate dimension there. Let's take Egypt for example. Egypt has incredible ability and capacity to produce renewables for its own needs, but also for so many countries, including Europe, including our neighbors, also in the MENA region and elsewhere. But the entire MENA region is very capable, not only Egypt. We have the investors, they have been here in Egypt doing a very good job. We have the private investor. We have now almost more than 20% of our electricity is now from renewables. We're heading to 40%. And so most of it is even done by the private sector. So we know that we have the investors, they know the country, they know the risk, and now they are even willing to expand at scale. We have the demand in Europe, we have the demand elsewhere, but what is maybe not missing, but what is we need a lot of effort in is the connectivity. How to take this renewable sources to Europe in a cost-effective way. We can do it now through the current technology, but maybe it's still a bit expensive. And here where we're looking for all MDBs and all platforms like MCDF to play a bigger role in trying to figure and help and develop the technology that can enable this very important, very real demand in Europe and the capacity in the MENA region and Egypt to do more. And here where MCDF and these platforms and others can all come together to play a bigger role that will help everybody and that will create a real example of cooperation, integration, and really working together for the same cause, and of course will help in the climate agenda. So I just wanted to give this an example, not only for Egypt, but even for the region and for all our neighbors. Thank you so much.
Your Excellency, thank you very much. And I think that these ideas of Egypt, tremendous renewable resources to be able to connect to the world, is a practical example of combining that. I want to invite now Mr. Axel van Tolotsenburg, Managing Director of the World Bank. First, with a big thanks, because throughout the discussions and exchanges, the World Bank and the IFC brought so many interesting examples related to the massive increase in financing that the institution has brought to climate change, but also some of the analytical work on the new country climate and development reports that are actually showing the way in many cases of connectivity, infrastructure, and climate. Axel, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My challenge is that after you have exhausted yourself through 10 panels and multiple meetings to keep the concentration to one of the last speakers, it's really difficult. And so this is a panel smart connectivity that I have to compete with climate smart connectivity. I hope that we will succeed here. Let me just thank the Egyptian authorities, but also the Multilateral Cooperation Center for Development Finance for organizing this. This is a necessary discussion. And particularly, again, to put the finger on infrastructure, particularly climate smart infrastructure. Why is this so? Because Africa needs massive investments. And we need always to remind ourselves that only 40% of the African population has access to electricity. That is an unacceptable notion. We need to improve that, and we should learn from the Asian experience, particularly from countries like Vietnam, that within basically 15 years we're able to go from 20 to the upper 80% of connectivity. And that is what that revolution we need. And therefore you need actually climate smart connectivity very much on this. And I think that is one big challenge. So we need a political commitment to this, and not only the SDGs, but given the multiple crises, we seem to be forgetting this. And I'm happy that we have this type of discussion, because we need to keep that focus on this. The second thing is that clearly, what will it take? It will require not only political leadership, but we need also to get the regulatory and the policy framework in place that these investments can take in place. But how to do it? There are many chances that we can do that smart also in terms of regulatory, that not everybody creates this little boutique regulatory framework, but that we work together. I'm thinking in the electricity through, for example, the West African Power Pool, the East African Power Pool. That requires a cooperation, but also good regulatory frameworks that can build on each other. And I would go further. That is the same as the digital revolution that we need in the African region. That actually we shouldn't reinvent 50 new regulatory frameworks. We should have essentially one regulatory framework that goes across Pan-Africa, and that can actually complement it, and that they can actually do this as smart as possible. So that is a big challenge to the African countries to see how we can get this. I think there are some good messages out there that the African Union has been pushing this, and I think we should build on the African Union leadership to part of this. Then the second thing is really to see this not only within the national boundaries, but across countries in regional integration. There's a huge potential for economies of scales, but also when we are thinking of electricity networks, if we talk about digital networks, we should not think of narrow boundaries. We should think that much, much bigger. And that, I think, we need also as a project approach. And I'm saying that in the bank, we should no longer think on this little operation. How can we help Africa with a far bolder value proposition to say, look, how can we actually increase within the 3 years by 10 percentage point energy access? And that requires not a couple of hundred millions, but it requires billions and billions of dollars. And here comes then where I think, together with the multilateral developments, the private sector, and then the local capital, we can do something. And I think that is actually the attractive thing, is how can we actually build bigger packages. I've been saying that also to the African leadership when we were talking about the implementation of IDA. And in IDA, in the next 3 years, we want to invest $65 billion in Africa. This is very nice, it's big, but actually it's not enough. And what it will require is a different type of thinking, particularly in infrastructure. I think what we need to do is how can then basically the organizations pull together and basically get this, and then not do what the private sector is best at, but really at those investments that require this complementary thing. I, for one, believe that we need to be far more ambitious, and also to have far more a can-do attitude. We have sometimes the attitude of negotiating forever with ourselves to convince that it is not possible. I believe for once that it's actually possible, that we need to be much more positive, particularly to African countries, and that they get the feeling that the capital is on the table. And we need to put our maneuver ourselves into a thing of discomfort, namely discomfort that we have not been able to support African countries to the extent that it should get the response to get the electricity access higher, because then when we talk about private sector development, how do you want to have private sector development if, namely, kids cannot start their startups because simply there is no electricity? So it is a non-brainer that we need to start somewhere, and that we need actually here to be far more ambitious. This is what I'm asking particularly African leaders to do, and then what we should do is then actually how we can much more be supportive. A last challenge is in those countries where it is easier, then of course we can do the investment. But let's not forget that unfortunately many countries are affected by fragility, and they are getting an even bigger penalty because they are completely left behind. Now here we need to provide massive support, including grants, but again what we need is the spirit of cooperation of the multilateral, their developments, and push this as hard as possible. So that is actually a plea. What we need to see that in this COP27, we should not only tell that the situation is difficult, we should that the situation is possible to convert this over the next couple of years and make credible progress. And there we need all to work together, at least where the bank is sitting. We want to be part of that coalition to again do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsfeld. And thank you for that call for action to say connectivity infrastructure can only be done through cooperation, scale, and consistency. I want to invite now Mr. Chong Jing-Wan, Chief Executive Officer of the MCDF, for concluding remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eddie. Months ago, MCDF and Ministry of Finance of Egypt co-organized this five-part workshop series on climate-smart connectivity infrastructure. We shared 45 case studies in Africa, in Asia, and in Latin America. It shows enhancing connectivity and enhancing quality of infrastructure can empower countries to better adapt and improve their resilience to climate shocks. We do need investment to fill the investment gap, but we also need something beyond the money. That is, we need to put in place the right policies and regulations, standards, framework of environmental social safeguard to ensure the right projects are invested in the right way. In 2020, 11 international financial institutions, including AIB, SDB, World Bank, and 7 donor countries, including Egypt, China, set up MCDF. Our purpose is to promote high-quality infrastructure and connectivity investment through the partnership. We have been expanding our network of partners to channel new financial sources. Up to now, we have provided 8 million grants to support 7 regional and country project operations in environmental and social safeguards, climate mitigation, and adaptation. We hope we can lock in $500 million to $1 billion in the next 5 years for those projects. So we are small, true, but big things always start small. With your support and the partnership, we are confident that we can start small and add a big impact on creating a better connected and more climate-smart future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wan. A final round of applause for the panel. Thank you so much.
Bye.